Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Her Voice Up podcast. My name is Afua Kesewa Akoto, founder of Her Voice Up. So, for those of you who are hearing about us for the very first time, Her Voice Up is a supportive community aimed at empowering women in regaining confidence in themselves and in their voices. Today, I have with us our lovely guest, Nadia Akyaa Otoo. Nadia is a multifaceted creative person with a background in sociology, social work, and law. She is also currently the driving force behind a budding fashion startup in Ghana called the Dressmakers GH Limited. You're so welcome, Nadia, and it's good to have you today.
Thank you, Ifwa.
Cool. So today we'll be talking about imposter syndrome, and well, it's a safe guess to say that we've all, in one way or the other, experienced some form of imposter syndrome. So before we begin, whilst I was researching on the origins of the terminology imposter syndrome, this is what I found. So according to Merriam-Webster, imposter syndrome was originally known as imposter phenomenon. The term was coined in 1978 by American psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Emers, who published an article called The Imposter Phenomenon in High Achieving Women. It's very interesting, Nadia, isn't it? How, imposter syndrome is, very common in women, isn't it?
Yeah. So, you're right, and I wanted
Yeah.
to point something out.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that it was changed from phenomenon
Correct.
to syndrome.
Yeah.
So normally, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical person, but
Mm-hmm.
because of my background in social work and sociology,
Yeah.
I have a bit of information when it comes to behavioral sciences.
Right.
Um, so with the imposter syndrome, right? When it comes to clinical psychology, they use a tool called the DSM-5 currently to make
Okay.
diagnosis. But
Mm-hmm.
at the moment, the imposter syndrome is not classified as a psychological um,
Yeah.
or mental problem. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
found in the DSM-5. But
Right.
as science um, advances and as science continues to progress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it, it was found, I think, in 1970. The original study was published by two female psychologists, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And as it evolved, it was found that classifying it as a phenomenon was um, belittling it or not um, giving it the due attention.
Mm.
Why it was decided that okay, let's call this thing a syndrome. And it's
Right.
not a syndrome because there are different aspects of it, different elements come together for
Mm-hmm.
you to now conclude that okay, this I have imposter syndrome. So we'll get into that as we go along.
Yeah. What's really interesting to me, what I'm really curious about is that the fact that imposter syndrome is more common in women than in men. Because with women, a lot of us are demure, we're shy, we don't really want to speak up as much. Whereas men are, they want to brag about what they've done and or that kind of thing. So that's what was really what I'm really curious about. You know.
So again, like I said, the study was from 1978,
Yeah.
and the control group for the study was actually high achieving women.
Mm,
And obviously, in the 70s, we all know women
yeah.
were encouraged to be outspoken or to do things that are typically thought of as male ventures. But
Yeah.
um, compared now, like 2023,
Mm-hmm.
compared to 1978, women are more free or more open to live as they want and
Yeah.
take bolder choices or make bolder career choices when they have to. So as we go along, I'm not sure whether
Yeah.
to just jump ahead.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. That's fine. We can hold that thought then.
yeah,
Yeah.
because recently there are other studies coming up that are
Mm-hmm.
saying, way. Stop telling women they have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
This is old, and so we'll get there. But
Yeah,
I
we'll
don't.
get there. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, perfect. So, my next question: how similar is it to feelings of not fitting in, or feeling unworthy?
Right. So I think in our initial conversation we skipped over the actual definition of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So it's basically consistent. So the keyword is consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling of um not being capable or not being
Mm. Yeah.
um worthy of achievements or success. Like, so you consistently feel like you are a fraud, and despite obvious evidence of achievements or things that you've actually done, you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you are basically an imposter, hence the term.
Yes.
And so it's like you will be found out soon, and there's this
Mm-hmm.
fear of like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, or I'm not doing it right, or things
Yeah.
like that. So with not fitting in, it's closely linked because
Mm-hmm.
obviously if you feel like you're a fraud, or if you feel like you don't deserve the spot that you have, like
Yeah.
if, for example, if it has to do with career, and then in
Yeah.
your company you are promoted quickly. You joined just 2 years ago or just a year ago, and you're promoted quickly because
Mm-hmm.
you deserve it. But within you, imposter syndrome is telling you you don't fit in, you're a fraud, and all that.
Yeah.
You definitely always feel like you are not in the right crowd, even if
Mm-hmm.
people are not making you feel like that. You tend to feel like that yourself sometimes. So they are closely linked because of the underlying factor of feeling like a fraud.
Right, right, right. And as well, how can we distinguish between normal self-doubt and imposter syndrome itself?
Right. So, self doubt, everybody has self doubt.
Yeah.
But one of the key differences is, like I mentioned earlier, consistent feeling. So it's like you're almost always feeling like that in spite of
Right.
obvious achievements.
Mm-hmm.
And with self doubt, normal self doubt, if I may put it,
Yeah.
um, it often happens right before a big um, venture, if I for want of a better word, like, so
Yeah.
right before you do something, you tend to, especially if it's something new, or it's
Yeah.
something you are not very familiar with, it's normal, we all feel it. But
Mm-hmm.
imposter syndrome, it works two ways. So it works before and it works after. So you've
Okay.
done the thing, everybody was clapping for you, you're on the stage, you're happy.
Yeah.
Then it's like you're like, am I being supposed to be here? Is it me that they are clapping for?
Yeah.
So
That's
the
really fair.
two key differences are consistent, like it's always happening to you. And then the second difference is with self doubt, if it's just merely self doubt,
Yeah.
once
Mm-hmm.
you have it before you venture into whatever it is, and you do it. You can even do it haphazardly, and you won't
Mm-hmm.
even feel like, you'll be like, oh, I did it, and maybe I could have done it better, but you won't even feel bad about it. But with imposter syndrome, it's like before and after, and you're always doubting yourself.
Right. So you spoke about imposter syndrome being very consistent. So then, is there a way with which we can measure that consistency to say, oh, I'm feeling this every single day, or I'm feeling this every week, or that kind of thing.
Okay. So consistently is not necessarily linked to frequency,
Mm.
because you might not even know that you have imposter syndrome till
Okay.
you have to do something.
Yeah.
So it's not really about like the number of days or the number of weeks, but it's like every single time you have to be given a certain opportunity,
Right.
your a small voice in your head tells you you are not worth it. You're like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not, you don't deserve it. You didn't achieve all of this, and very soon everybody will find out that you are a fraud or you're
Yeah.
fake,
Fraud. Yeah.
nagging
Mm.
every time.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, what are some of the common causes or triggers of imposter syndrome?
Okay, so don't, in my readings, I didn't necessarily come across the causes,
Mm.
but I came across the characteristics.
Okay.
So I realized that maybe as I speak about the characteristics, the
Yeah.
traits may come up. So one of
Okay.
the first things that came up was perfectionism.
Mm.
So oftentimes you hear people, and it tends to be women a lot, who will say, "Me, I'm a perfectionist. I like to do things,"
Yeah.
and normally it's meant to be a positive trait because you mean you go all out to get the work done, and you want it
Yes.
like attention to detail, blah blah blah, all that. You're a perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
But here is the thin line between it being okay and it
Mm-hmm.
borderline imposter syndrome. um
Right.
you focus so much on things being perfect, such that when there's even the slightest difference or the slightest change in the vision you had,
Mm-hmm.
your one of your questions was about how it affects your mental health, and
Yeah.
as a result of this extreme perfectionism, you actually might suffer physical panic attacks or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
anxiety or even depression for some people. That's
Yeah.
where you realize, okay, no, this is not normal. Me,
Mm.
me wanting things to be perfect. This is a bit. I need to seek help, or I need to speak to somebody about this. So where you are so focused on the perfectioning of things, of projects,
Mm-hmm.
of so much so that any slight change in the overall outcome causes you
Yeah.
anxiety. It's not ideal. Then another, so a trigger or a cause of that might be from childhood. Maybe your
Yeah.
parents were so strict on you. They kept telling you, as a girl, you're not supposed to do this. As a girl, you're supposed to don't make your dress dirty, don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes we boil, like we keep all of that in, and then it comes out later on in life as
Yes.
business, and it might not necessarily be the most positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Another trait or another characteristic was fear of failure. So
Mm-hmm.
there are people who are so afraid of failing that they won't even attempt, they won't even
Mm.
try anything new, because
Yeah.
all you can think of is this thing is
I'm
just going
going
to
to fail.
like
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. And it's so extreme. And like I said, with all of these, even if you look in the DSM-5, right,
Yeah.
all the mental things that you can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Like none comes to the top of my head right now, but anything that you can think of, right? Every
Yeah.
human being has like a minute degree of it.
Mm.
Every
True.
human, like,
Yeah.
and it shows up in different ways. How we respond to stress, how we respond to things, and there's a certain minute degree which is acceptable. So
Mm.
obviously, we all have a certain level of fear of failure. Every human being,
Definitely. Yeah.
but it's the degree of it that makes you realize, no, this is taking over my life. This is not making me productive, and I need to speak to somebody, or I need to seek help. Then, interestingly, there's also fear of success. So, there
Right.
are certain people who, by certain people, I mean certain people, me. So,
Pointing at yourself.
I think as we go along, there was a part
Mm.
about sharing your personal experience. So, I don't know
Yes.
if I can skip in right now or
Yeah,
wait
you
till.
can. Yes. Yes. I was going to go into that. Yeah.
So, with me, right,
Mm-hmm.
growing up, I was very academically um, inclined, and most of
Mm.
my success was tied to me getting an A every time. And
Right.
I had to change schools because of parents' situation, and so I had to
Mm.
move from living with my mother to living with my dad. And the
Right.
school that I was taken to didn't have the same resources and the same
Okay.
facilities that my previous school had.
Mm.
So even though in my new school I was still topping the class,
Mm-hmm.
because everything that was taught comes to me easily and I'm always able to
Okay.
when the final results, these results came,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do so well. In my new school,
Oh.
it was the grades were generally not that great. So I was
Mm.
still in the people who had done well.
Yeah.
But people that I used to teach, I had a friend who always used to copy my homework and all of that.
Mhm.
She actually had 7 ones. For those who are in Ghana and who grew up in Ghana, they
Mm.
understand that. But I
Mhm.
don't know the equivalent in other places.
Yeah.
And was very painful to me at the time. And
Right.
so when it comes to things that have to do with academics,
Mhm.
I always have this fear of like, I know I can do it. I know I can excel, but
Yeah.
I don't know how, to what extent, like I will be able to excel. And once
Mm.
I excel and I achieve it, then what next? So
Right.
those
So you're always looking for the what next. Mm.
exactly. So it ends up crippling me, and I don't actually end up doing the thing. So, for example, if it's like a fellowship I've seen that I'm so interested in and I need to apply for, and it has
Mhm.
an essay attached,
Mhm.
I know I can do this thing well. But then, for whatever reason, my like I'm afraid of if I do it well, and then what next? Like,
Mm. Mhm.
and it's a strange. I can't explain it. I don't know why I always feel like that.
Yeah.
Like I have this thing tied to my academic success, and it's like
Mm.
yeah, and it's always a fear. So for people who may have similar traits, you might
Mhm.
want to look into speaking to somebody, especially if it's again to the
Mhm.
extent of causing you anxiety and all the different things we spoke
Right.
about.
So would you
Then
recommend? Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
then the next thing on the list is actually denial of competence or
Mm.
capability. So again, you know that you can do this thing.
Mhm.
You might not even have tried it before, but knowing yourself, you know that you're a person who goes all out when you have to do something. So even
Mhm.
if you put yourself to it, you would be able to do it. But for whatever reason, you
Mm.
doubt your competence and you doubt your capability. Now the thing with these traits and these characteristics are they are
Mhm.
not mutually exclusive, and they are not also
Right.
all supposed to be present at once. So you may
Mm.
have two of these traits, or you may have all of them together.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't, whether you have one or whether you have all of them together, doesn't take away the fact that you may or may not actually have imposter syndrome. How
Right.
you know for a fact if you have imposter syndrome is either by talking to a professional psychologist who has, they
Mhm.
have these tools for, they're usually quizzes, and then you take
Okay.
and you might find where you are on the
Mm.
spectrum, and then they will give you the proper recommendation to help manage it better.
Okay, that's really interesting. And as you began to share your personal experience of imposter syndrome, I kept on thinking about how now, like, the whole evolution of
Social media,
social media is really fueling imposter syndrome, because you see a lot of people doing different things. You're like, oh, can I do what they're doing, or so it all ties into the fear of doing it, and doing it well, and then you become quick 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 pulled, and you say, oh, I'm not even going to try it, so
yeah,
it's all interlinked in a sense. Yeah. So another interesting thing that I wanted to know is how do you think societal expectations and cultural norms contribute to imposter syndrome in us as women?
yeah. So let me give this story to illustrate
Mhm.
this point a bit.
Okay.
There was a time in my life where I used to teach, and
Okay.
one of the teachers, right, he was actually a teaching assistant, and
Okay.
he was now sort of grasping the whole concept of international school environment, and he
Mm,
was like a very traditional Ghanaian man with very
mm,
strong notions about things.
mhm,
So one of the children was very good. He was very brilliant, but he liked playing a lot. And so sometimes you would take his exam paper, and
okay.
you realize he had made tiny mistakes on the paper
Mm,
simply because he was probably even playing while he was doing the exam. And
okay.
so it was something we were all trying to talk to him about so that he at least can stay focused and excel and all that. Then this gentleman, so the one who got the highest score was a girl. And this gentleman,
Mm,
um, in counseling the boy, says to him, "Ah, how can you sit there for a girl to pass you in the
mm,
class?"
mhm.
Like I don't know, but I just
Insane.
immediately, yeah, because one of the things with me, and if you're my teaching assistant, is I don't want to embarrass you in front of the
Mm,
students.
right.
But that assertion needed to be addressed because I
Yeah.
couldn't. Maybe you think you've helped the boy, but what have you done to the girl?
Yes,
You
that's
know,
really true.
so I needed to address it. So of course I addressed it then in
Mhm,
a very polite way, and
mm,
we managed to avert any kind of. But this is just one example that I was there, and so you can imagine the different women or different girls all over Ghana who are
yeah.
often told, oh, a girl is not supposed to pass a boy, or a girl is not supposed to do this, or a girl is not
Yeah.
supposed to. And so you grow up um, feeling like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be more intelligent than my husband, even, or I'm not
Mm,
supposed to be more successful than my male siblings or my male
mhm.
friends. And even if you achieve things, that there are these phrases like "oba din din" and things like that. And
Yes. Yeah.
in English, literal translation is like
A supplement or something.
hard woman, you know.
Yeah.
And I find all those things very unhelpful
Mm,
because one of the things that I noticed
mhm,
with women, especially women from Africa and women of color, if I may speak on their behalf, is
mhm.
that we have this expectation on us to endure. It's
Yeah.
like you're
That's
supposed to
really true.
be strong or be tough. But where it matters the most, if you
Mhm.
are strong or tough, or you show that same strength and toughness they've been telling you to show, you are immediately you are being some way, or you are being the B word. And
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
very strange because on one hand, we are supposed to be tough and enjoy everything. On
Yeah.
another hand, when I'm in the leadership position and I'm trying to enjoy and be tough and be assertive, then
Yeah.
all of a sudden those traits are not feminine. And it's
Very.
very strange. So
Mhm.
yeah, culture has a big role to play in how
Mm,
you feeling like you don't deserve your achievements, or you're not supposed to be in a certain room because
yeah.
all the people there are men of a certain caliber, and you feel like, well, me, I'm just a small woman, and what am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
Especially like, for example, in corporate world, like in
Yeah.
the room and things like that.
That's true, and it's interesting you spoke about women in the corporate world, because there are a lot of challenges that women face, especially women who are like C-suite or CEOs. You know, because you're supposed to be an elite leader, but when you show those strong traits, then you're pushed to the side and all of that. So we previously spoken about mental health, but it's really good that we zone in on it. So how does imposter syndrome affects mental health, and what are some potential long-term consequences if they are not addressed?
Right. So, like I already mentioned,
Yeah.
panic attacks and anxiety attacks.
Hmm.
Long term for that actually might even be physical health.
True. Hmm.
People who have palpitations or who have
Mhm.
migraines, and they are all as a result of being like anxious, like extremely anxious. So
Mm.
consistent migraines or consistent palpitations certainly can be good for your
Yeah.
physical
How?
and
Mm.
yeah. With imposter syndrome, another thing
Mhm.
that potentially happen to your mental health is you might find yourself being depressed,
Mm.
especially if you are in the habit of well, not the habit, but yours manifests in the way of comparison. It's like if
Mm.
you're consistently comparing yourself to other people, you
Yes.
might find that you are often very depressed because when
Mm.
you've done something which clearly everybody around you is proud of you and is encouraging you, you
Yeah.
might think they are lying or they are just
Yes. Yeah.
patronizing you
Mhm.
because you it doesn't look like so and so's own when they did it, or it doesn't
Mhm.
it's like you are constantly putting your own self down and feeling
Yeah.
depressed. Obviously depression has its own long term
Effect.
consequences as well.
Mm.
There are some people who tend to substances and end up in
Mhm.
all sorts of places that they shouldn't, simply because it all started from self doubt or graduated to imposter syndrome, or I don't know. But
Yeah.
it has to, you definitely, once you notice um a consistent pattern and like certain feelings that are
Mm.
for you to carry, you definitely need to speak to somebody about it because it's not something to overlook.
Yeah, because the depression is really dangerous. I was certainly listening to somebody, and she said it on online. She has thousands of followers, over 100,000 followers, and she's like, "Oh, you guys are always telling me I'm doing well. My videos are inspiring and everything, but I'm consistently depressed, and I literally stay in bed. I do not get up, and I was like, wow, this girl is doing amazing. She's doing so many interesting things. She's inspiring us, but you really don't know what is going on behind closed doors. So with people who tend to have like any tendencies of depression, we're telling you that you have to go to a clinical psychologist or speak to your doc- doctor and not suffer alone. Cool. So, what strategies or techniques do you recommend for overcoming imposter syndrome? That is, if imposter syndrome can even be overcome.
Yeah. So, like most things that are classified as syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
um, the likelihood of being rid of it, like without doing anything, is like you are there and then you're suddenly rid of all your imposter syndrome.
Mm. Yeah.
It's by some fairy godmother wand or something, but
Yeah.
it can be managed. It can be
Mm.
managed. And being managed can count as overcoming, depending on how you choose to look at it. But
Yeah.
obviously, if you stop doing the work, it tends to creep back into your life.
Right.
So it's one of the main things really is
Mm-hmm.
um, just take things one day at a time, if possible,
Mm.
and celebrate your successes because
Love that.
growing up in Africa, Ghana specifically,
Mm-hmm.
certain things like even friends, children, sometimes they can be mean without realizing that they're even being mean, and
Mm.
it's based off of things adults have said to them. So,
Right.
for example, you are with your friends, you get your test score back from your
Mm-hmm.
like one of the subjects that I was very good at was English. Like whether it's English grammar, literature, I would always score like 100 on my thing. And once I get it, and then I'm like a little bit excited or show some
Mm.
excitement, then the person next to you goes like, "To no girl," and you're like,
You
"Okay."
did well. You had to celebrate yourself.
not that deep, maybe then you immediately tuck your paper away. And
Yes.
remember, I mentioned um, moving from one school to another.
Mhm.
Actually, when I got to the school, they were in class two, so I joined them in class two. And
Okay.
immediately I got there, I think they were in second term, so they had learned things in first term that I wasn't there. But immediately
Right.
I got there, I was a best all-round student, and I speech
Nice.
and word giving day, I was given a prize.
Okay.
Then the kids started being mean, and
Mm.
when I was a child, I used to have long hair as well. It was relaxed too. Now I've stopped relaxing it, but it
Oh,
was
okay.
plenty. And you would notice some of the girls like now in hindsight,
Mhm.
I can say maybe it was jealousy. I don't know at the time. I didn't know
Mm.
that was what it was. But somebody would like take sand and pour it in your hair or do
Wow. Can you
all
imagine?
sorts of weird things and also tease you about the fact that you think you are smarter than the rest of them and this and that.
Mm.
So I started actually intentionally failing my
Oh, wow.
like I would I would intentionally know like I know the answer but I'll put something else
For the
there
wrong
so
one.
that
Oh,
when
wow.
when we go to the playground or wherever and we take out our papers, I'm
Mhm.
like I also got a 50 like you. So now like we are the
Mm. So you
and
were trying to fit in with the crowd. Mm.
exactly. And now that I'm older, I
Mhm.
mean, I realized all of that was nonsense, and now I
Mm.
celebrate my things as much as I can. And
Mm.
one thing that I wanted to point out though before
Mhm.
I continue with the recommendations is sometimes imposter syndrome is not always internal. It's not always because you are feeling some type of way.
Mm.
Sometimes systems and institutions actually are making you feel like that. And they are
Okay.
gaslighting you to think you're crazy, but you are not.
Mm.
Because, for example, if like women are
Mhm.
consistently in the workplace, the
Mhm.
systems are made to be fighting against them. How do you now
Right.
turn around and tell her that she is the one who is feeling like an imposter when you haven't created the environment for her to fit in? So she feeling like she
Right.
doesn't fit in. It's
Mhm.
not. It's not. It's not mental. Like she's not imagining it. You've actually not created the environment for her to fit in. So there
Mm.
are those discussions as well that
Right.
we can have.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to chip that in
Yeah.
before we forget how sometimes certain people are not actually suffering from imposter syndrome, but it's just the environments in which they find themselves,
Right.
external factors that are actually making them think they have imposter
Mhm.
syndrome, but they might not actually have that. So we can talk
Right.
about that after the suggestions. So the
Right.
first suggestion is to celebrate your achievements, no matter how
Mhm.
small, no matter
Mm.
how silly or too known you feel.
You
Just
might feel.
have that
Mhm.
confidence to, yes, I did that. And the
Mm.
point is not about whether it was good or not. That's a different conversation. Just
Mhm.
the fact that you actually ventured to do something,
Yeah.
celebrate. Then the second thing is have little times for things that you like to do that
Mm.
have nothing to do with your career or whatever the source of your imposter syndrome is, because
Right.
it's not always tied to career. For
Okay.
some women, it's actually tied to motherhood. So, for example,
Mm.
if you are a stay-at-home mom, and
Mhm.
whenever they say we should bring cookies or something for the children, there are some
Mm.
women who are doing some kind of cake or something,
Some
and
professional looking stuff.
you can only make some 3 or 4 cookies that are simple, but
Right.
you looked at all the YouTube videos that you can get, and you did that
Mm.
cookie that you've done. It's good.
Yeah.
Like, it's going
Exactly. Yeah. True.
to whatever the source of your imposter syndrome is,
Mm.
sometimes try to do things that you like outside of that and
Mm.
see how those things make you feel. Where
Okay.
you think nobody's judging you or nobody's marking you,
Mhm.
just do something for fun and how
Mm.
that makes you feel. Try to hold on to that when you go back to the things that you think
Right.
you are being marked for, and
That's brilliant.
remember
Yeah.
that feeling you got when you just did something for fun and you
Mm.
were happy might help. Then the third and most important suggestion really is to speak to a professional somebody, so like a
Mm,
clinical psychologist
yeah.
or like a counselor, a social work counselor who specializes in this area. And
Right.
um, let just take one day at a time and let's see how things go. So
Yeah.
that's the advice I can give.
That's really great. So now what I want us to delve into is the importance of mentorship and role models in curbing imposter syndrome.
Okay, so mentorship. So, well, like I said, with the third suggestion, talking to a clinical
Mm-hmm.
psychologist or a professional who can help. Um, in lieu, or well, not in lieu of, but in addition to the clinical psychologist, having a mentor can actually help boost your confidence or boost, like when
Yeah.
you realize that there's somebody who has walked the path you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to walk, and especially if, like you expressed with a lady who had a
The
thousand.
depression. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So imagine if you are like a new online personality starting out, and
Mm-hmm.
she chooses to mentor you, and you realize from conversations that she actually also
Mm-hmm.
has her moments
Yes.
that could help you realize you are not alone in this.
Yes.
And what I would say when it comes to mentorship is be careful who you choose
Mm-hmm.
as a mentor, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we put too much on people and we get
Yeah.
disappointed when we realize that yes, because they are also dealing with their own
Yeah.
things, and
That's true.
expect
Yes.
them to come and heal us entirely. So
Yeah.
it's mentorship is catch 22. It can be positive, but it can also even cause you more depression if you realize that the mentor is not mentoring the way you want. Yeah,
Yeah.
you need
That's true. Yeah,
just
because we sometimes create demigods out of people, but they're also just as human as we are. So we're just going to a mentor to learn. So they are not the they are not the entire source of the information we need. We're just learning from them, which is really important. And how important our friends, our family, and the people we love, also, how important are these people to us, when we're dealing with imposter syndrome.
right. So with people close to us, they are normally our first contacts, even as children. Our parents, our siblings are the
Mm,
first group of people who get to know
mm-hmm.
before even take us to school when we meet our crèche friends, and we
Yeah.
so they are very important. They are important in how our worldview is being shaped to
Mm-hmm.
begin. So, like I gave the example earlier of women who have turned out a certain way because their mother used to
Mm,
a certain way when they were small.
mm-hmm.
So some mothers, like when you're walking, they'll insist on your posture. Like you can't eat ice cream, you
Mm.
can't do like things children are supposed to do. You're not
Yeah.
allowed to do them
To
because
live your life as a child. Yeah.
perfect. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a grown woman, obviously that family influence
Mm,
travels with you until you are able to resolve it. Now,
mm-hmm.
in present day, when everything has already happened and you are already dealing with the imposter syndrome, the
Mm-hmm.
same people can be helpful to you as well, or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just, with everything in life, there's no one size fits all, especially when it
True.
comes
Yes.
to friends,
Mhm.
because my family and they are very amazing. Um,
Mm.
but the I had this sister, like so I
Mm.
come from a polygamous family and
Right.
different mothers, one father.
Okay.
And growing up, the age difference between me and them is very wide.
Right.
And
Right.
growing up, she would always make certain assertions like, um, I'm I'm called Mamea like at home.
Oh,
So
okay. Nice.
um oh Mamea, yes serious. Mamea this, Mamea that's like just
Mm,
assertions. And
mm,
for the longest time I believed her that
mm.
I'm not a serious person or this or that. And I had to stand up one day and ask myself like, what am I not serious about? Like, what is all this serious? Like, I'm
Right.
12-year-old child or 11-year-old child. What am I supposed to be serious about that I'm not being serious?
Exactly. Yes.
So I realized I needed to draw the line. And the
Mm.
thing right now, if I probably sit her down, she won't even remember.
Yes, but you've internalized it. Mm,
Exactly. So, like she's an amazing sister. Now we have like a really good relationship and everything. But
mm,
there are times when I sit down and I think back to the times when she used to make those assertions and wonder
mm,
why. And I
mm.
realized it wasn't even from a place of malice. It's just
Right.
perhaps someone also said those things to her, and I don't
Mm.
know how those things even affected her or how she's dealing with
Yes.
it. But she was also projecting on me. And
True.
so
Right.
I don't know, when it comes to family and friends, my advice is the same as the mentors.
Mm.
Just know what is working and what is not working.
Right.
Sadly, even though some people are your blood and your family, you
Mhm.
might need to distance yourself from them.
Mm.
Not
Mhm.
in a malicious way, like I'm no longer talking to you, I've cut you out of my life. No, that's not what I'm
Mm.
for. But distance yourself in the sense that don't give them the room and space to keep
Get in your
pouring
head.
and harming the negative things
Mm.
into your mind because it's affecting you in a way that they don't even realize. So
True.
just find a way to manage relationships such that you are not constantly at people's mercy where they are telling
Mm.
you that affect
Yes.
negatively. So
Yeah. Right. And what I always say is, even though people are your friends and especially family, you can love people from afar. You can say this person is in my life, but they are not going to be in my life. They are in it, but I'll just be careful, with how I relate them to them and all of that. So I'm interested to know what self-care practices should women do, or would you recommend for women who are currently dealing with imposter syndrome?
yeah, so I think we touched on this in the recommendations when I mentioned
Yeah.
how to find things that you like. So
Yes. Yeah.
whatever outlet that may be,
Mm-hmm.
if it's going out with your friends to just
Mm.
maybe brunch or something, or even being alone with yourself and reading a book, whatever brings you joy. And
Mm.
one thing I realized about most women, and I realized it about myself, and I'm working to change it.
Mm.
We often go, like when I say we often go, it's like you wake up in the morning, you're thinking
Yeah.
about
Other
everybody, like
people. Mm-hmm.
food, everything. It's like you're just going, 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 going. So there's
Mm-hmm.
no point in time where you sit down and wonder, what do I actually even like?
Mm.
It's almost like, okay, let's eat this, especially for women who have children of a certain age. Mommy, we
Mm.
want to eat this, mommy, we want to eat that. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, that's what we all eat. So it's not being at a point, it stops being what mommy wants to eat and
Right.
what the husband wants, what the children want.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that if that like it brings you joy. But the
Mm.
point is take time to figure out what you as an individual, not you as a mother,
Mm-hmm.
not you as a sister,
Mm.
wife, you as a person, like an
Mm-hmm.
individual God's child. What do you like in
Mm.
this?
I like
And
that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
do that and just leave the rest and like try to be calm about life if possible. Like one day at
Mm, yes. So we shouldn't always think about, what other people are around us want, and keep going. We should also sometimes find time with ourselves to rediscover what we love, what we enjoy doing. Brilliant. And the final question I have, well, you've already touch on it, but can imposter syndrome be completely overcome, or how do we manage it in the long term fashion so it doesn't keep on, creeping back into our lives?
Yeah. So basically, talking to a professional and getting specific tools for your particular situation. So,
Mm,
like I already mentioned, some people have panic attacks, but it's not everybody that gets panic attacks when they have imposter syndrome.
mm-hmm,
So, for example, the clinician might give you certain techniques or certain tools to use once you
mm,
have a panic attack coming on. So it's just constantly having conversations with yourself, constantly
mm,
um, giving yourself positive affirmations, and just
mm-hmm.
no, it's not easy, and it's not like a one day magic trick, but
One day fix.
over time you just become more confident in whatever techniques you are using to help manage yourself.
Right, brilliant, brilliant. And as well, I wanted to add, not on only our mentors important, but now we hear about people who are sponsored. So these are people who speak for you in a room. So they say, oh, this girl can do this particular task, or he can take on this particular role. So we need both mentors and sponsors who are there for us, so that help helps to eliminate imposter syndrome as well. So before we close, Nadia, do you have any concluding thoughts, or anything you want to say before?
Yeah. So the topic I mentioned earlier about
Mm-hmm.
how sometimes women actually have imposter syndrome, and
Mm,
how recently studies are finding that actually for some women they don't have imposter syndrome.
mm,
So, for example, my career in the fashion industry was
mm.
it's something I had always dreamt about when I was small. I've always been artistic,
Lovely.
and my art is versatile. Like I write, I
Mm,
sing, and I do the visual
mm-hmm.
stuff as well. But why I chose fashion was I realized personally I love to dress up and I love clothes. So
Mm,
it's the one thing that I kind of thought, okay, I could make a career out of.
right.
Now, when I started, right, I
Mm-hmm.
reached out to a couple of people
Mm.
to tell me, so to speak. So that's why I'm a bit squeamish about the whole mentorship thing.
Ah, okay, right.
Yeah. So there's this very popular Ghanaian brand. She's doing very well, and
Mm,
she's on top of the whole fashion food chain. And she personally was very lovely to me. That's it. I
mm,
was thinking about the whole thing. Then
mm,
I spoke to people associated with her
mm,
who are not necessarily at her level, or maybe they got to where they are because of her, because they are associated with
mm,
the particular person.
mm-hmm.
And I remember I said to one of them, I'm starting a fashion brand. That was before I had actually started. And
Mm,
I needed a consultant or somebody who would guide me
mm.
through um like building the
Yeah,
entire
yeah.
brand. And then this person says to me, it wasn't even a question or anything, it was just like, you can't afford me. And I'm like,
Mm,
first of all, that's not very professional. Secondly,
mm,
why do you assume I can't afford you? So
correct.
the point of me narrating that story is
Mm-hmm.
immediately it's a new environment, it's a new
Mm-hmm.
industry I'm venturing into. And
Mm,
I know I'm very talented. I
mm-hmm.
know I'm brushing on my skills and my technique. I'm not there yet because I
Mm,
didn't go to fashion school. Everything I know, I learned by myself. So that's
right.
another thing. to, in our culture, we value paper a lot. That's my love. We value paper.
Okay.
Um, often I tend to feel like I'm not doing the thing when I'm actually doing the thing. Like I'm, it's like I'm literally
Yeah.
certain things that I even do that um certain people who may have gone to fashion school or not, I don't know, don't even do. So there are certain
Mm,
steps you need to follow if, for example, you are building a collection. So like
mm,
the investigations that I do, the whole thought process, everything. And I
mhm.
learned everything from reading books and
Wow.
because I taught earlier, I was able to
Mm.
make a curriculum for myself for fashion so that I
Oh,
can learn.
wow.
But
Nice.
for whatever reason, my brain still feels like, okay, these people will look down on me because I don't have a
Mm,
certificate or a fashion degree from so and so place. Meanwhile, I'm somebody who has actually studied law. I'm somebody who has studied sociology and social work. And
mm,
I'm somebody whose natural talents and innate abilities are helping her to do everything I'm doing. But
mhm.
somehow my brain always
The
tells me
imposter syndrome.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so I already feel like that. And then I call
Mm,
you for support, and your first word to me is, "You
mm.
can't afford me."
Wow.
How is that helpful? So that's
Mhm,
what I mean by sometimes it's the environment. So even if I
mhm.
didn't have my own imposter syndrome, hearing that from somebody in the industry can immediately
Yes, it'll
me down,
trigger that. Yeah.
like cause me to start having imposter syndrome.
Mhm, mhm. Wow.
Sometimes it's the environment and it's the people in a certain industry or in a certain field who are not
Mm,
very receptive towards
mm,
newbies. And
mhm.
anytime you're new at something, there's always that natural self doubt. So for
Yeah.
somebody to also make you feel unwelcome or feel
Mhm.
unworthy or like you don't measure up, that
Mm.
that would do a number on you, no matter how confident you are naturally.
True.
That's the last thing I wanted to point out, that sometimes it's not you, but
Mhm.
you are speaking to the wrong people or you're in the wrong crowd.
Right. Yeah.
Currently, I've met some amazing people in the fashion industry in Ghana who are
Nice.
helping me and supporting me, and that has been really good compared to
Brilliant.
when I initially started out.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So what I wanted to add before we finish is that with like with social media, there's a lot of things going on. It's quick. You see people doing this. People are traveling, taking pictures. People are doing well in their careers and stuff. So I wanted to encourage like people who are listening to us today that you shouldn't try and measure up to what other people are doing. As they are said today, you need to find what you find joy in doing, do it and do it well, and just basically feel free. That is how you can effectively eliminate imposter syndrome. So that was my final take. So all too soon, we've come to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much, Nadia. You've been a very wonderful and graceful guest. We gained a lot of useful tips today. So I'll just sum up some of the key takeaways before we go. So the first one is that imposter syndrome does not define you. Imposter syndrome or not, you are worthy and you belong to any room. Imposter syndrome is all in your head. So just get up and try it. Do something today that scares you because you might just be good at it. So before we go, Nadia, could you please share your social media links so we can all keep tabs with you. So if you have an Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, could you please tell us?
So it's the dressmakers underscore GH
Okay,
Instagram, and on
right.
LinkedIn, Nadia Utsu. I think when you type it in the search,
It should
I'll pop.
come. Perfect, brilliant. So thank you all so much. Enjoy the
Thank
rest of
you
the
for
day.
having
Thank you.
me.
Bye. Take care.